Casuals versus pros. Who is more important? That's a trick question. The truth is neither, but both are needed. People try to separate casuals and pros because it's easier when there is an outside group from yourself to blame. But you are one in the same. What separates the two is your skill level, but that's not black and white. You are both needed, but you need different things. And you don't need to balance differently for low elo and high elo. The higher you are, the more balance changes tend to affect the way that you play the game. Changing the cooldown on an ability by 2 seconds doesn't really matter too much to players that don't understand resource management in the first place. Balancing for high elo is trying to adjust for when players maximize the efficiency on heroes. Balancing for low elo players is trying to make sure the early game experience isn't too punishing and it's easy to understand and learn from. The lower elo players are not held back by balancing as much as they are by a lack of knowledge and understanding of the game. So what they need more is information, lessons, guides, and there's a reason why creators such as myself and others exist in these spaces and do well. We're filling in for something that is lacking in the game. For NetEase to help low elo players, they need to offer them more ways to learn how to play in the game. And ultimately, that's what good game design is always trying to do. Game design at its best is easy to understand and difficult to master. What we all try to do is create an experience in which you die or when you fail, it's very easy to understand why you failed and how to do better the next time. We want you to walk away from a failed experience blaming yourself and feeling like you could have done better. This way, you naturally learn on your own as you play. In PvP games though, it's a bit more difficult because there's more scapegoats for players. It's very easy to blame teammates, matchmaking, or meta, etc. So even if you create an experience in which it should be easy for the player to blame themselves, many players, due to their own egos, will find anything else other than themselves to blame. It's also why the people who do climb are the ones who look at their own gameplay, the ones who go out and look for guides and information to see what they're missing. So if low elo players are missing information more than anything, so at what point does it feel like balance and meta truly starts to affect you? Well, I've played through almost every rank, and I can tell you the exact moment it felt a bit frustrating that I didn't know the meta heroes at the time. At least in my opinion. I have all the ranks laid out here. And if you had to guess where you think it would start to matter, where do you think it would be? You might think the very middle with Plat. Surely that's where the meta starts to matter. But no, even in this rank, as long as you understand the fundamentals, you can climb with any hero at all. Okay, so in the higher elos, when you get to GM, surely up in these ranks, when it's about the 5 to 10% range, it starts to matter a bit more, right? But even then, not so much. As long as you play well and you understand the game, you can still carry with just about any hero, even in GM. The only point in time throughout my entire experience of playing this game, the only time I wish I knew meta heroes was right here. Halfway into C1, things started to get a little more difficult. Up until then, I felt like I could play whatever I wanted as long as I played well. And for the most part, that was true. Because my philosophy when it comes to playing games is to always play what you enjoy, play what you find fun. So I'll pick my favorite heroes and I'll get good at those heroes regardless if they're meta or not. It's impossible to balance for low elo because once those players gain more knowledge and improve, it changes their perception of the game. Low elo and high elo is just a spectrum of skill. You all realistically want the same thing in the end, but you don't know how to ask for it. So how do we help the lower elos? Well, we need 2 things in my opinion. First, what all players need from the start are heroes that are easy to understand and difficult to master. Something that isn't too punishing in the lower elos, but can still show thoughtful skill expression as you improve. A good example of this is Psylocke, whom I've played from the very beginning of the game. Early on, she had incredible burst power put into her neutral kit. This burst made her very frustrating to play against in low elo, as players felt like they didn't have time to react. So they nerfed her burst and shifted power into her ultimate. I believe they did this at the time to offer another solution to the powerful support ultimates at the time. But that still felt unfair as well, so they nerfed the charge rate on the ultimate and took back some of the damage, but something was still missing from her kit. She still didn't feel good compared to everyone else. So they added the smallest bit of damage back to her right click, but more importantly, they increased the cooldown reduction on her left clicks, and now she can use her abilities more often. In the end, this slowed down her burst, but also made it more about how she used her abilities rather than how fast she used them. And using abilities more often meant more skill expression. This made her better for low elo and high elo. She's in the best spot she's ever been, and I believe she can be used as a gold standard for what you want to do with other heroes. Once again, easy to understand and difficult to master. Not too punishing in the lower ranks, but also thoughtful skill expression in the higher ranks. This is the kind of experience you want to create for your players. The second thing you want to give low elo players is you want to be able to teach them through play. I know this sounds crazy, but games back in the day didn't have tutorials. They had to teach you through gameplay mechanics and level design alone. One of my favorite videos that talks about this is Sequelitis from Egoraptor, where he talks about Mega Man, and I'll link that below. But basically, there can be experiences in game that are both fun and educational for you that teach you without you realizing it. NetEase already makes PvE content, and what better way to teach the player through repetitive exercises than that? You can teach the player how to jump between cover or spot when a target's resources are down. There are many ways you can teach the player and create a fun experience for them at the same time. This was something that was always lacking from Overwatch that I hope that their PvE would do. Now the same thing is lacking from rivals, but they have an opportunity to be different here, and I think that they should be. So high elo is where balance affects players more, but high elo players have another problem. And in fact, they sort of share a similar problem with low elo players. They both suffer from perception. Low elo players put too much weight on balance and not enough on fundamental knowledge and self-improvement, but high elo players have their own bias. They're quick to judge any change before giving time to experiment. They fail to see past meta and give anything else a chance, possibly missing out on sleeper picks or interesting team combinations. Just recently, as of making this, Sentinels won using Penny and Iron Man, something many teams wouldn't even have considered. High elo also often fails to differentiate between something that is unfun to play into versus unbalanced. There are heroes that are objectively not great but just feel terrible to play into, and balancing and changing them can just be incredibly tough. Even when heroes are nerfed to not be as powerful, if players have a negative perception of that hero, it's very difficult to change that perception. High elo players are also very used to being at the top and knowing more than most that it becomes very difficult for them to be receptive to new information and change. And as much as they all know, they collectively also wouldn't always agree with each other. High elo players also have added pressures, some self-imposed, that make them play differently than you normally would. The rank, titles, money, it all becomes so important that they become more afraid to take risks. Experimentation, learning, discovery, fun, all the things that make games great, players do the less that they climb. It's also important that players at the top will cheat, win trades, stream snipe, use trackers, do whatever dirty trick they need to do in order to win. The problem too is that high elo players have a heavy influence on what the rest of the community thinks. And when high elo players and content creators are closed-minded, their audience becomes closed-minded as well. Many do not understand the power of their influence and the impact that it has. And many players will regurgitate things that pros and high elo players say, despite the fact that the high elo experience vastly differs from the average player experience. So while high elo players do have an excellent understanding of the game, they are heavily biased in their opinions as well. So if low elo players lack knowledge and high elo players are too biased to remain impartial, who do you balance for? You don't balance for either. Which isn't to say what players say doesn't have value, it does. But you have to read in between the lines of what the players are saying. You have to look at their frustrations and ask yourself, how do I help the player feel less frustrated? How do I go about getting them to blame themselves and not the game? You need to create something that is easy to understand and not too punishing in the beginning, and something that is difficult to master but offers thoughtful skill expression as you climb. Even if you took every high elo player and put them in a room, they wouldn't be able to agree on what a balanced game looks like, and the same could be said for low elo players as well. Balance is subjective still, and what players are looking for is the perception of fairness. They want to feel like they had the tools to tackle any problem that they face in-game. Sometimes that's balance changes, and sometimes that's changing the perception. And just like how Psylocke has gone through many changes, it takes time to iterate to find that sweet spot. What I care about most is not whether or not the changes are perfect, but if they are quick to iterate. The more they are willing to iterate, the faster that they can improve. A true sign of a bad game is not if the balance is bad, but if they are slow to iterate. As someone who has designed for a game before, I can tell you that I can't promise that I can make something balanced, but I can promise that I can make something fun. The longer you have time to iterate on anything, the better it will be. It takes time to polish something into a balanced and healthy state. The problem with live service games is that you need new content to keep players around, but new content is unpolished and unbalanced. It's impossible to create anything in a studio of 200 people and know what the thousands of other players around the world are going to do with it after you release it. Gamers are creative, and they will always find a way to break your game in ways that you can't predict. And as much as players think that they would agree on what a balanced game looks like, that's not the reality. And I'm not saying the devs are going to do a perfect job or that I agree with everything that they do, because I don't. Just that it's a lot more complicated than players realize. You can't think about the game in only one elo. There's the new player experience, the learning experience, the low elo experience, the high elo experience, and the pro player experience. You need to take into consideration all of it, because the reality is you're all the same, you're just at different stages. This is why the devs have a difficult job, but it all comes back to the same principles of game design. How do we get the player to blame themselves and not the game or each other? And how can we do that through gameplay? Players low elo or high elo don't want balance, they want the perception of fairness, no matter what stage of the experience that they're at.